my name is Shauna. I run the Baltimore chapter of Hollaback. So who here has heard of Hollaback? Yeah, I'm sure a lot of you have recently, especially, right?
Yeah.
So each chapter is run by individuals. It's very DIY. It's sort of separate from the mothership, as we call it, like the main branch in New York. And then what we do is we kind of just share resources and stories and help each other out. And, oh, I did this cool thing. It was really easy. You should try it, that kind of thing. But here in Baltimore, we're actually pretty independent. We kind of just do our own thing and do everything we can to avoid fundraising, because then all you do is fundraise, right? So we try to only do things that don't cost any money. So just to quickly put it out there, we didn't have anything to do with the viral video that came out. We did share it on social media in good faith, but once we realized how problematic it was, we withdrew. And we have certainly, we're on the same page with the mothership that that cannot happen again. And unfortunately, that video was sort of out of everyone's hands. Basically, we're such a DIY and volunteer run nonprofit that when someone comes to you and says, "I'm going to make you a video for free," you go, "Okay," and you try to tell them sort of what would work and what doesn't, and what your message is and what's not. But then it's just sort of out of your hands. So that's sort of what ended up happening. So I just wanted to clear the air on that real quick. And if you have any more questions about that, feel free to ask throughout this process. But we're not here for that. We are here to let you all know how to deal with street harassment, right? So, correct me if I'm wrong, we want to know kind of personally as individuals, but we also want to know maybe how we can help people we serve. Is that right? Can someone tell me a little bit more about this program?
Everybody.
What's right at you?
So we're the sexual assault peer educators, and we go around campus educating people about how to prevent sexual assault. Had a couple friends who had been sexually assaulted and trying to end gender violence on our campus. So we do tabling and workshops and presentations.
Street harassment can be very triggering to people that have experienced gender-based violence, right? It can be a reminder of past trauma that they've gone through. And so that's how this sort of plays into the overall spectrum of gender-based violence for you, what you're concentrating on. It's a part of that spectrum. But again, it's just kind of every time it's experienced, it's a reminder of women and LGBTQ folks' place in society, right? How we can't really move in public space without being reminded of who we are, and that we are seen as lesser than in society, which is a real drag. So sorry to, be talking about that today on this lovely day outside. So I'll get into it a bit, and first just kind of make sure we're on the same page about what street harassment is. Now, none of these slides are super, super important visually. So anybody over here, if you're just I don't care, that's fine. It's just sort of something to stare at if you sort of tune out for a second, That way you don't have to look at my mug all day long. So let's just check in. What is street harassment? When I say street harassment, what do you think about? What comes to mind? Catcalling? Come on, y'all. What's that?
People following you.
Okay. When does it happen? Yeah, it is verbal, catcalling. But what does catcalling imply? What kinds of things are being said if it's a catcall? Anyway.
Sexual things, usually.
Uh-huh.
Or commenting on your appearance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, kind of like an extreme flirting or something, right? But we know that not all verbal harassment is that sort of positive, seemingly positive verbal stuff. So nice ass, for example. Nice ass is pretty common. That can be seen as really offensive to someone. And then, of course, some people are like, yeah, my ass is great, thank you. And that's fine, too. It's kind of up to the person experiencing the harassment to decide for themselves, is it harassment or not? Is it a compliment Now, this story is from our site, and it's someone walking by, I'm just going to say it in this room because I can, walking by a Jiffy Lube, and hearing that from someone who's working on the clock. And they're just walking to get to the bank, I think the story was. So, not exactly a compliment. That's not like an interaction between two people that are genuinely interested in each other, right? So it's not that. Public masturbation is another form of street harassment. On the bus, subway, park, wherever. Really weird things. Also, weird verbal stuff where you're like, I don't even know if this is street harassment or not, but I know I don't like it because I don't like the way you said it. A girlfriend of mine, she says that she was told to have one weird earring and then like no earring on this side. And one time a guy was like, hey girl, I want to be that earring. And it's like, okay, that's kind of more gross than anything. Like, I'm not even really offended. It's just like weird. But then, you know, it starts getting into the real meat of what street harassment is. Like, it's not just someone asking for it, it's someone who keeps asking for it even when you give really obvious physical cues that you're not interested. Even if you say, I'm not interested, they might keep going. And basically, it's any sexual harassment in public space. So the same exact things that you could sue over in the workplace, the same exact things that are outlawed in school, those are the things that are happening in the street, in public, from strangers, and there's not really any great or obvious authority figure to turn to. It's not like there's a cop on every corner, and even if there is, sometimes it's actually that cop that's harassing you, so there's no one to really turn to until now. There just haven't been any great ways to deal with it in the moment, which is what Hollaback is working to change. So, and just to be clear there, it is motivated by gender expression, so really it affects mostly women and LGBTQ folks. But if you seem like a woman or LGBTQ person to the harasser, that's enough. It's your perceived gender expression to that person. So it doesn't even matter like who you are. If you're not doing your gender right, according to that person, you might still be harassed. So something like this is really, really common. And we also have a really big trans community in Baltimore. And there's just a lot of ignorance around the trans community. So there's a lot of like misdirected transphobia, like that looks like homophobia, because they just kind of don't get what trans is. And it also happens to really young people. It runs the gamut as far as like age, race, class, where you're going, what time of day. It can happen anytime, anywhere, and almost by anyone. That whole intersection of who can experience it, race, class, age, blah, blah. The same is true for who can actually be the harasser, right? Anyone can harass, anyone can be harassed. And then, of course, this is the kind of thing that happens regularly, and then you tell someone about it, and they say, are you sure he wasn't just flirting with you? So this is that myth that we're trying to dispel, that it isn't just, it's not catcalls, it's not all nice, right? It's actually really, really scary. And here's a fun little scary chart, though. This is basically visualizing how street harassment plays into other forms of gender-based violence. Like, basically, if we live in a society where we are cool with, where we allow, either through silence or yes, approval, where we allow street harassment to occur, what is to prevent someone from going that next step further and actually following someone home, stalking them, assaulting them, bullying them, raping them, murdering them, right? Domestic violence is a huge, huge issue, and I really do think that street harassment is a part of that. If you can enter public space and basically be up for grabs and anything can happen, what is to stop that harasser from pushing a little bit further to see what they can get away with, right? So it's up to us to sort of stop it and to say, no, this isn't okay in our community. That isn't okay, and you can't go any further because we won't allow it. Street harassment happens everywhere. This is a map from our website. We actually put a little pink balloon every time someone submits a story to our site. We put the location down just in case there's like, one corner where there's always like 5 dudes always standing there. Like just in case people want a safety plan, their routes. But it's also just to show like a nice visualization to show like how often street harassment happens. So all these pink balloons they obviously do not represent all the street harassment that has ever happened. They represent where people have the technology to share their story on Hollaback, and then from there, who actually was willing to take the time to submit their story. So that's a very, very small amount of people that actually experience street harassment. You see there's like some like in the ocean too? We had a story submitted where someone was on a cruise and they were harassed repeatedly by like one other person on the cruise, and they submitted their story, and I was like, can you imagine being trapped? Trapped on a boat with this person. And so just to talk about, again, how serious it is, this is a very informal study that Holly Curl did. She runs the Stop Street Harassment site. The big takeaway here is really that street harassment affects how people move in public space. It affects their lives. It's not just a nuisance or an annoying thing. People, double check how they are dressed before they leave the house if they just don't want to deal with it, right? They'll change when they leave their home or when they go out. Some people even have changed jobs or moved because the harassment right where they lived was so bad, or where they worked was so bad, that they couldn't put up with it anymore, right? So it limits people's access to public spaces. It moves it controls how we move, which is completely unfair, because when you are being harassed, that harasser then just walks away and is fine and never thinks about it again. So this is just to show how pervasive a problem it is and how important it is that we fix it. So everybody cool so far? Everybody kind of know what's up? Really, I'm just speeding through some background knowledge, but it's all making sense, clicking. You all seem like a cool group. You get it, right? You get it. Okay. All right. So let me give you just a little bit of background on Hollaback. We started in 2005 when a woman named Tao, someone was masturbating across from her on the subway, and she took a photo with her adorable old-timey flip phone. And she took the photo so that she could go to authority figures at the subway station and say, hey, this guy's masturbating, because it is illegal. Here you go, here he is. And they said, what do you want us to do about it? He's long gone. They didn't even care. Even if they can't do anything about it, they did not care about her story at all and how traumatic it was. So what she did is she went on Flickr and uploaded it to Flickr. And does anyone remember Flickr? I know, I'm so old. Okay, so she uploaded it to Flickr, but it actually went viral. And people in the city, it ended up on the Daily News in New York City. People were talking about it. It got the whole city talking about what is street harassment, what is appropriate behavior in public, what should people put up with and shouldn't put up with. Look, they call her brave there. They call her brave for snapping a photo and basically shaming him instead of allowing that interaction to shame her and silence her. She was not silenced. She took that photo, she put him on blast, and then everybody knew what he'd done. And it ended up, he actually owned 3 or 4 restaurants in New York. People identified him from that horrible, horrible cell phone photo. And the people that started Hollaback were like, well, why can't we do that? Why can't we shame our harassers instead of us internalizing that shame or guilt or frustration that we feel when we have these interactions? So they started a blog where they could submit their story. Here's what happened, and here's a photo of the harasser. Here's the guy that did it. So now those stats are actually already out of date. We have over 80 sites now in over 26 countries and 14 languages, which is crazy. It's awesome. They're all over the world, and it's super, super exciting. And again, these are all volunteer run, like people doing this in their own time because they care so much about street harassment because it affects them that much. Like that's why I started the Baltimore chapter. I was like, I have to do something about this. I felt so strongly about it. Like I don't know about you, but like I'm the only child of a single mom, and so I've always felt really like I can do whatever I want. Like no one's gonna tell me to shut up. I'm awesome, right? Which is ridiculous, but that's how I felt. That's how I grew up. Everyone telling me how great I am because I'm the only child. Oh my god. So it's like so in entering like work or whatever activities that I would take part in, I never really let like any kind of discrimination based on my gender get me down. Or if or I might not have even noticed it, honestly. But if I did notice it, I was like, who cares? I'm awesome. I'm doing this. And it's only with street harassment where I'm reminded in such a hard way that being a woman means not being equal, right? It's when I hear that, what's up, pussy, is when I go, oh, God, you're right. Like, oh yeah, women still aren't paid as much as men for the same job. Okay, like, it reminds me of everything that's shitty about being a woman or LGBTQ person. So that's why it mattered so much to me, because it's just a constant, for a lot of people, constant daily reminder of their place in the world, which really starts to wear down on you, right? Are you all aware of that term microaggressions? Right? Like seemingly small things that happen that on their own maybe aren't such a big deal, but over time they add up. And it stops being kind of annoying and it starts being really, really upsetting and affecting you in ways that you might not even know. Preventing you from living your life to the fullest or like wearing whatever the fuck you want, going wherever the fuck you want. You deserve to do that. And this keeps us from doing that. So to holla back is to basically say, no, I'm not going to let that happen anymore. I'm going to speak up. I'm going to speak out. I'm going to tell people my story, my truth, let them know what this is really like in hopes of tipping that scale in society so that society can't say, oh, it's just a compliment. Oh, he was flirting with you, or oh, he's drunk, he doesn't know what he's doing. Once we have enough stories submitted, society can't say that anymore. They can't look at our stories and think that we're all lying, or that we all don't get it, or that we all can't take a compliment. Like, they will read our stories and they will know, oh, this is actually really serious, and it really affects people's lives. So we do that, we collect stories, we encourage people to take photos on their cell phones if they feel comfortable and safe enough to do so. We have a free app, so you can use it on the go. I do that all the time, so it helps me remember, what happened. And then we map the stories, and we put it all online to let people know what people are really experiencing. We have a very strict anti-discrimination policy. Stories can be submitted anonymously, and all the stories, pictures, and comments are vetted. So basically, we go over everything when it's submitted to make sure there's no like classist or racist language, or even ageist. I'm not really totally into. And and we want to make sure no one's like, oh, I'm mad at my boyfriend, and here's a picture of him in his room. Okay, that's not like street harassment. But honestly, that's never happened. I've never actually gotten a story like that. I think a lot of people might assume that half the stories are like that. It's never happened once. Every story has been totally legit, and not once has anyone ever said, come back at me to say, hey, that's not me, or that's not what happened. Basically every story submitted is the truth. So here are some examples of people basically saying no more. That's a really grainy photo of someone pulling out their penis on the subway. And a woman basically... Did you guys ever see this video? It was a pretty great viral video. She is super, super small, but little did the guy know that she's really into like martial arts and taekwondo and stuff. So she's super confident, right? I mean, she's like this tall. And she, once she realized what was happening, like he was behind her and he had pulled himself out right behind her and she felt something on her back. When she realized what was happening, she was basically like, oh no, oh, I'm taking you to the police station. Oh, fuck yes, you are not getting off the subway car without me. She started engaging bystanders. She was saying, like, men, block the doors, don't let him leave, he's coming with me, and like just yelling, right? She's really awesome. So she wasn't silenced, right? Like she spoke up and out. Even though people around her might have been quick to just be like, oh, never, I don't want to deal with this. She told them to help her, to get involved. And she let it know what he was doing. Hey, everyone, look at this, right? She put the shame and the lens, the focus on him, instead of it being about her. Because what would happen if she didn't say anything? She'd be stuck on that car, right? Without anything. Like, how would she feel when she went home? If she just stayed on that car, didn't say anything, like, how long would it have lasted? Would he have gotten off at her stop? You know, these are really scary things, right? So by her speaking up, her video went viral, and I think it inspired a lot of people to also stand up. So here's another one, a little bit different, still called Brave in this article, the title of the article. She didn't feel comfortable actually saying something to this person at the time, but she did feel comfortable enough to just get out her cell phone camera and take a picture and put it away. And his picture still ended up online for everyone to see, like what he was doing. So I think that there are different ways to hollaback. There are different ways to speak up for yourself. And as long as you do something that lets you know that you're not taking it, I think that it's really powerful. And there's different levels of that. So you can literally yell at someone and point them out and tell everyone to block the doors. Or you can just take a quick pick, you know. There's a lot of different methods to fight back in that way. Here's just a quick shot of our website and all those little people. So the fun, cool part about Hollaback is that every time you submit your story, we can basically use that info to put the larger story of street harassment out there, right? Like Hollaback's been mentioned in all these different forums. And we really do advocate for people that experience street harassment. And we can't do it without people's real stories of what they actually go through, what it's really like. So just by submitting your story once, you are an activist, right? Like you are doing something really powerful, and it adds to this huge picture of other people that are putting up with street harassment, that don't want to anymore. And so we do our best to help with that and let people know, let society know. Street harassment is not cool. So here's a fun comic. We'll take a little break. I'll let you read this comic. Can everybody read that? Get it? Yeah. We probably don't need to talk about the difference between street harassment and flirting, right? Like, flirting is an actual compliment. You actually want to continue having a conversation with that person, or you're actually interested in dating them, and it's not just a quick, hey bitch, you know, as you walk by them on the sidewalk, right? We're all cool? Okay. Okay. So let's figure out, let's talk about ways to intervene when we see it happening. So now this is something that you can tell the people that you work with. Like, it's good. This is really, this is good stuff for people, individuals in the moment when it's happening. Okay, so that's a little different than like later on or whatever, or groups. So this is just what do you do in that moment as one person. In general, people recommend that you use strong body language. So you stand up straight and you hold your head up high. It's very fake it till you make it. Just like look super confident, even if you're not, even if you're scared shitless. You make statements. There's no reason to like ask questions about your harasser or why are you harassing me? You know, like, you're not going to get an actual conversation with this person. They're not going to tell you. They're not going to reason with you. You don't have to do that. You can just tell them no, or tell them not interested. You don't have to apologize for speaking up for yourself. You know, saying, no, I'm not giving you my number. When someone keeps asking. And then they start to say, well, what are you, a bitch? Are you a dyke? And blah, blah, blah. You know, and they keep going and going. You don't have to say, like, I'm sorry, like, you're being rude to them. Like, if they act offended, it doesn't matter. Like, they're offending you. They're coming into your space. You're allowed to just say no. And another recommendation is, even though it can be very difficult, try not to lose your temper. That's hard for me. It, of course, might escalate the situation. I think we all know in here, in this room, that street harassment is part of that spectrum of gender-based violence. So there's a lot of, like, anger and violence bubbling under all those little comments and actions with street harassment, right? It can turn ugly really fast if you don't give someone the response that they want. So it's best if you can keep your cool in the moment. And again, you can lose it as soon as you get out of eyesight of that person. I've totally done that myself. But it's if you can be calm, it's best. And then, but really, you decide when you're done. That's the best piece of advice up there. Again, you don't owe that person anything. Just like you don't owe them a date, you don't owe them your number, you don't owe them to smile, you don't owe them to be pretty to them. You don't owe them to be straight. You don't owe it to them to tell them why you don't want to talk to them. You don't owe them anything, so you can walk away at any time, and there is power in that. And just like, you know, people ask, what do we do? What do I do when I'm street harassed? Unfortunately, there's no perfect response. There's no magical response to street harassment. So you have to do what's best for you, what feels safe for you. If that means ignoring it, because we're not really ignoring it, you can hear everything. If that means ignoring it, that is still a response. But at some point, you got to let go of all that anger or frustration or guilt or shame or whatever you're holding on to when something kind of traumatic happens, right? So I'm sure you talk about, like, self-care with the people that you counsel. So even if you ignore something in the moment to keep yourself safe, at some point you gotta do something for yourself, right, to counteract that. So I'll talk about that in a second, but here are some ways that bystanders can get involved. So let's say you're not the person being harassed, you're actually witnessing the harassment. Now, most often, the best bystanders are going to be male or big people of bigger stature, you know? Like, I am not a great bystander because I'm pretty small, physically kind of weak, you know? But I do have a loud mouth. So one thing that I can do is be a bystander from across the street. If I see something happening and I'm across the street, I can yell and say, "What are you doing? Leave her alone. She doesn't like that." I've done this, I can honk my horn to drown them out. Like, I see two people, blah, 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 you know, and I just, until they looked at me and stopped, and then the lady left, right? So those are things I can do. But, you know, if it doesn't seem super aggro quite yet, anyone can check in with the target. So that just literally means you're harassing her, and all I do is walk up. You good? You okay? Okay. If they're fine, you know, if they're a couple and they're just arguing, but I can't tell, like, she's gonna let me know. She's gonna be like, "Yeah, I'm fine," you know, and that's not a big deal. Like, if they're like, "What is wrong with you? You're interrupting our fight," or something, like, you know what? You checked in and made sure nothing horrible was going on, right? So you did good. It's okay. You can walk away and feel fine about that. It doesn't, like, ruin their life that you looked like you cared about someone, right? Like, they're gonna be fine. But let's say they are strangers and you are harassing her. Then me doing that, you might give me that eye of like, "Oh my God, yes, help me." you know, and then I can do oh, we were supposed to meet, come over here, there's Jessica, hey Jessica, come on, you know, like fake some bullshit, right? You can do that, and by checking in with the target, that's how you avoid that whole, like, I'll rescue you and leave that woman alone and like that kind of thing that it seems like a lot of men are worried about doing. You know, any dudes that are like, they're like, well, I want to intervene, but I don't want her to get mad at me because, like, you know, feminism and stuff. You know? And so, like, so that's the way around that. If they're worried about looking like they're going to rescue you and the woman ends up saying, like, I don't need your help, I've been being harassed for years without your help, then just ask if they're okay. That's all. You can also confront the harasser. And again, all of this has to do with your own safety, if you feel safe enough to do so. But I encourage you to try to step out of your comfort zone, right? If you've never intervened, if you've never said anything, then maybe your fear is sort of like a good excuse and not like as legit. Does that make sense? Like, I'm just leveling with it. Like, if you've been afraid your whole life to just be like, hey, are you okay? Okay, well, we need to get on the other side of that. Like, there are absolutely times when it's appropriate and safe to check in with people and make sure they're okay. So that's just like an internal thing to think about. Like, what's going on when you're afraid? You know, like, is it society telling you that, you know, I mean, really, like, there's a lot of white faces in here. Like, is it racism? You know, is it society like making us racist, raising us racist, where we're like, oh, I don't know, I don't want to say anything because those are people of color. Like, okay, well, we need to really work on that and make sure that's not happening. Okay, and same thing with like classism and ageism too. So another way to get involved is to confront the harasser. Just say like, hey, ma'am, that's not cool. Or cut it out, that's gross. She doesn't like that, it's obvious, you know, because you can tell when the woman's like, oh my god, and like down, and like, oh, and she doesn't like it. And you can say that and feel confident saying that she's not going to then get mad at you, right? Another thing to do is distract the harasser. That's my favorite. I can just walk up to the harasser, hey, what time is it? And that gives just enough of a break for you to walk away. Right? And I actually try to physically kind of get in between them, you know? Not in like this most super obvious way, there's no like grand gesture or anything, but like if I can just sort of block his view of her, then maybe that's enough for her to go, oh, awesome, and just walk away, right? So what time is it? When was the last bus that was here? Or when's the next bus coming? You know, just whatever, just distract the person. And then stand up to your friends. Like that's really where a lot of the change is going to happen. Because, you know, talking to strangers, they're going to be defensive. They're not going to listen to you in that moment. I mean, like if enough people, the point of interacting, the point of getting involved is if enough people say, whoa, that's harassment, stop harassing her. You know, then eventually people go, oh, okay, I get it. But in that moment, a stranger's going to be like, yeah, fuck you, you know, and that's fine. But when you stand up to your friends, you actually have a lot of power to change their mind. And they might still be like, oh, whatever, bad, you know, if they're like stupid and horrible. But some of our friends are stupid and horrible, right? So they might make fun of you for caring or sticking up for someone, but it means a lot more to them when you stand up to them and you go, well, you're harassing someone, so I'm going to say something, you know? And it can be as simple as, dude, that's not cool. It's so simple, but that works. If enough people are willing to say it, right? If we're all willing to say it every time and call people out, then minds can be changed and people will get it. So, some other ways to take action. So if we're looking for some more like creative stuff, let's say you're working with someone and they're not going to go online, they don't have access, or they don't want to, or they're just feeling, you know, upset, and they need something, maybe physical or tactile, there are some things they can do to feel more involved if they need more than just telling their story, right? And they can go online and they can start their own online, Tumblr, whatever. Like they can add to these that already exist. Chalk blocks, and chalk block, that's one of my favorite things. It's really simple. You just have a piece of chalk that's not really suspicious to police or campus security. A piece of chalk, like a spray paint can is, right? So you can have chalk with you at any time and not get in trouble. And then you could just write like, I was harassed here, wherever you were harassed, and just take that sidewalk back, to be like, this is my public space, fuck you. Not on personal, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I know. All right. And then the pictures on the bottom, I love this campaign that we did. It's called Harassment Is, and it's all about what harassment is to you. Because everyone's experience of harassment is a little different. And that's based on things like age, class, race, gender expression, LGBTQ, ability, all that stuff. So, what might seem like not a big deal to you is actually harassment for someone else. So that's important to keep in mind. And I'm sure you know this. When someone comes to you and tells you their story, this is what happened to me, I feel like I was harassed, you believe them, right? You just believe them. That is their experience. That is what they took in. Even if you would be like, that's not a big deal. Like, that was harassment for them. So just remember that. I'm sure you guys are really good at it too. Just believe them. Believe victims. Okay. So, how are we doing on time? I don't even know what else you guys want to...
We're going to do a little bit more.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, I'm going to dip real quick into a campaign that we started in Baltimore that we created. I'm really, really proud of it. Basically, this is the story of... Here, I'll just read it really quick. I was carrying groceries home at night when a dude started following me, asking me if I had a dick or a pussy. He got angry when I ignored him. When I finally got the nerve to turn on him and tell him it didn't matter what I had because he wasn't my type, he got so pissed off that I hid in a nearby restaurant. When I told the restaurant owner what happened, he told me not to worry, because if the guy came in here, they had a bunch of big guys in the kitchen that would take care of it. He also called me a cab and waited for it with me rather than oversee the closing of the restaurant. That's a good story, right? A lot of stuff going on there. So that was submitted to the Baltimore site, and it's actually one of the reasons we were inspired to start a Safer Spaces campaign. And so this might translate to y'all. Maybe the school has a Safer Spaces campaign. Maybe it needs one. Maybe you can encourage safer spaces in the areas where you sort of spend your time, right? But basically the deal is, we were realizing that street harassment doesn't just happen on the street. It can follow you into a restaurant. It can follow you into a club where you want to see a band or DJ. It can be someone following you within the club when you are seeing a DJ and all you want to do is dance, right? It often forces people to leave their fun night out because they'd rather leave than put up with someone harassing them, or put up with security saying, well, what do you want me to do about it? Or put up with being harassed by security. So we thought that is not okay. So we wanted to create Safer Spaces campaign and encourage local venues of all different kinds and all different neighborhoods to sign on to this campaign and to say, okay, we're going to take street harassment seriously. So our process is, we were also inspired by Hollaback London. They did something pretty cool. Basically, a club in London said, put on their website, if you're harassed in our club, let us know, we'll deal with it. And it was just a nice, obvious tab on their website. Because they were called Fabric, they heard secondhand that women were leaving their club rather than stay until security, hey, I'm being harassed here. So they were losing money, which is the great motivator. So they decided to take a stand and say something about it. And in Baltimore, we were like, okay, let's do this, and let's take it to the nth degree. So we encourage people to make an explicit safe space. You can't just say like, hey, we're a safe space, tell us if you're harassed. Like, I don't think that's enough. You have to make it super, super obvious that LGBTQ people and women are welcome. And so that involves actually, having a training, knowing how to deal with street harassment complaints, knowing how to deal with harassers appropriately, things like that. So again, I'm kind of speeding through this part, but basically a study was done and it was only done within like heterosexual environment, unfortunately, but it's something. Study was done saying that the men who were sexually aggressive in bars were just as aggressive whether they were drinking or not, and they basically knew exactly what they were doing if they had been drinking. So the excuse of like, he's just drunk, he doesn't know what he's doing, or he didn't mean that, or whatever, which is probably fairly common in this environment, they basically disprove that. Like, he does know exactly what he's doing. Alcohol might be the excuse to say things that he might not otherwise say or do. But what the researcher really encouraged was that if a bar wants to make the female patrons feel welcome, the bartenders must be trained to look out for that aggressive behavior. Because alcohol or not, it's going to happen, basically. Like, it's up to the people in the bar to set the tone for what's okay and not okay in their space. So that's what we are hoping to do. So what we do is we train places and we make them sign a pledge that they'll take harassment seriously and basically follow our training. And the training involves letting people know what street harassment is, why it's important, kind of what we've been doing a little bit, discussion about common scenarios in that particular venue, because, coffee shop's not going to have the same issues as a sex toy shop, right? So we want to know, like, what happens most often, what are they worried about, and we give them resources. We give them a packet that kind of explains Street Harassment 101, what victim blaming is. Like, we really spell it out for people that don't know. And same with dealing with trauma, ways to grounding techniques, stuff like that. You guys all know that stuff, right? Yeah. So we give them all that, and then we train them to actually deal with it in the moment. So let's see. And that's our poster. We make them hang our poster, too. We give them a really, really obvious way to tell customers, patrons, that they're a part of this campaign. And that's for the people that might be harassed as much as it is for the people that might harass, right? So if you see that in the city, and we have about 8 spaces right now, and we're working on more, and it's all volunteer run in my free time, because I also have a full-time job, so we do what we can, but there's a lot of interest in the campaign, which is really good. People just don't know what to do. So that's what we're working on. But if you see that poster, you can tell anyone in that venue that you were harassed, and they're going to take you seriously, and they're going to give you some options. So let me tell you what those options are in case it applies to something in this environment for y'all, okay? So what we tell venues, after we train them up, let them know what's going on, someone approaches you, and you're kind of, this is if you're part of a space, if you can set the tone for a space, if you're in charge in some way. We let them know to listen. Listen, validate, right? Yeah, that does sound scary. That does sound bad, right? All of that kind of stuff. And then give the person 3 options. And those 3 options are, okay, well, here's what I can do for you. I can keep an eye out on the person. I can go talk to them, or I can kick them out. What would you like me to do? So you're giving that person the power to decide what's right for them. And I think a lot of us know that sometimes when we're dealing with these kind of traumatic stories, a lot of times people just want to be heard. They just want to be taken seriously. So more often than not, someone might be like, no, it's fine. Just keep an eye on them, I guess. Like, it's cool. Like they just want to tell you, they just want to be believed, and to know that they're not the crazy one, like society keeps telling them that they are, right? So that's going to happen most often. But sometimes you got to talk to the person. So we recommend, whether you're keeping an eye, whether you're talking to them, or whether you're kicking them out, you get backup. Just get someone else to participate in that with you, like so that you're not the only set of eyes on the person. Because what if you got to go back at some point? Or if you got to talk to them, you want someone looking out to make sure like it doesn't get more aggressive, it doesn't escalate, and if it does, they can step in and help out. So when you talk to a person, it's not confrontational. You're not telling them that they're the worst person in the world and everyone hates them. You're not telling them that, you're not a judge and jury. You're not saying what's true and what's not true. There's no reason to be on the offensive, so they don't get on the defensive, right? Like you're just saying, hey, so I've heard that this is going on, and just so you know, that goes against our Safer Spaces policy. So if we get any more complaints, we might have to remove you today. But, just want to let you know what's going on, because it could totally be accidental. You staring at this level, everyone around the room, maybe that was an accident. But just so you know, like, that's what's up, and, So by talking to them in that way, you're letting them know that you do have an eye on them, that people have complained, and you're not mad at them. You're not making them want to fight. You don't want to do that. You're just letting them know, like, we see you, and this behavior that I've just named is not okay. And hopefully that'll shape them right up, right? And they'll stop, because they actually know, oh, someone's watching me. Like, oh, my actions have consequences. Because that's really been the problem with street harassment this whole time, is people could get away with a lot, because what are the consequences? Who do you turn to in public when there's no one around? Like, who's going to say, no, please don't grab that person's butt? There's no one around to do that. So this is a way to say, like, we see you, here's the consequence, we know what you did, kind of, without being really aggro about it. And then if the option, we always say to venues, like, if someone's been touched, like, just go ahead and kick the person out, right? There's no, like, discussion about, like, oh, should I keep an eye on them? It's like, go ahead and just get rid of them. And the way to kick someone out is, again, you're not judging them, you're not an investigator, you're just saying, like, okay, so you did this, and that's against our policy, so you need to leave. We're not kicking you out forever, but you have to go right now. And in some places, like if you've taken someone's money at the door, you can say, like, here's your money back, but you gotta go. And that might escalate, especially if there's drinking involved. So again, I encourage you to just get someone else to help. But it's really important to go ahead and go through with that kicking out of that person. So that person knows that their actions have consequences, and so that everyone else in the venue knows that you don't put up with that that's not okay. Like how amazing would it feel to witness someone getting kicked out for touching a woman inappropriately? Like, wouldn't you just be like, yeah, get that guy out of here? Like, wouldn't you just feel safer in that environment? Like, they're not going to put up with it. I'm safe here. If that happens to me, then my groper is going to get kicked out. Instead of them not caring. Instead of bartenders or security just being like, whatever. Like, you're not going to go back to that place. So that's what we're telling venues, that it's obviously like a money thing, a patronage thing. People will return to your business if they feel safe. And really, who do you want to keep returning? Like, scary harasser groper people? Or do you want, like, awesome ladies and LGBTQ people to keep coming? I vote the latter. So it's been going really well so far, this training. And, we hope to just keep doing it. Else that might need some self-care. And it's all words, you can read it all. But, like, the important thing is the bottom. We just straight up believe them, validate them, use those active listening skills. You're looking them in their eye, you're shaking your head, repeat that same language that they're saying to you. Yes, that does sound scary. That would suck. I'm really sorry. And just, take it in. And whether or not they want to press charges or they just want to watch a movie or, whatever their response is, whatever they need, just be there for them because it's their choice how they want to pursue anything. Now, it's good that y'all give people choices, right? And let them know what is possible for them, what their rights are. Definitely do that. I'm sure you're doing. But you don't want to criticize if they choose to go a way that maybe you wouldn't go, right? It's their choice. It's up to them. And then here's some self-care for you. Look how relaxed that lady looks. She's really good for self-care right now. So you can listen to music like this lovely lady here. But there's a lot you can do on your own, and I think the important thing is figure out what works for you and let that be your go-to. Because kind of knowing what your response is, knowing what you need to do, knowing what really calms you down, that can get rid of half of the stress of what do I do to relax? Find a thing and just do that thing, and then you're just going to get the same results. You're just going to feel better every time. And I kind of feel that way about responding to street harassment. If you feel the need to verbally respond to your street harasser, as I do often, I try to just say the same thing. I have the same response in my back pocket. I just say, not interested. Or I say, that's street harassment, nobody likes it. So I know what to say, because I'm going to say the same thing. And it's basically something that works for every instance of verbal harassment, no matter what they say, right? And I know I'm going to get out my phone and take a photo so that I can put it on the app. I know what I'm going to do, so that's boom, half the stress of street harassment is gone right there, because I know what my response is. So same with this, you got to drink some wine and watch Scandal, drink some wine and watch Scandal, and just do it. You're going to feel better when you're done, just go for it. But, feel free to get creative and, play around with different options. And that's